Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about the key phases in an HRIS project and the challenges associated with each one.
Some people think an HRIS is just a simple software package, which you can replace as easily as you update an app on your smartphone. But if it were really that easy, we would know.
An HRIS is a complex system which you have to bring to life and integrate. To do that, there are several steps, and each one comes with its own challenges. So, what are the key steps to rolling out an HRIS and the associated challenges? What's the story?
So, there are three major phases: the pre-project phase, the rollout phase, and the project phase.
To keep things simple, let's start at the beginning. The pre-project phase is about defining what you want to do. So where does that start?
With the HR policy. Before you can assess your HRIS, you need to understand your HR policy and how the HRIS fits in as an armed wing.
This phase is about outlining the role the HRIS should play to make HR policy possible. As a system, an HRIS has an architecture whose properties can support or hinder the HR policy. So you have to translate the non-negotiable aspects of the policy into properties you need from an HRIS.
It's a real labor of love because formalizing that is no small feat, especially since there are always hidden challenges such as internal power games and sensitivities. It's not always easy to navigate.
Next comes the assessment of your current system. You conduct an analysis process by process, as well as an overall analysis of the whole system. It's important to find the right lens for analyzing each process depending on the framework of your project. You also have to try to look at the situation in an unbiased way.
That's true. Sometimes you have conflicts of interest. You don't want to have to admit that you made a mistake. So you water down a negative aspect to preserve your image. For example, honesty is the key to a successful diagnostic.
Once you've established the problems to be resolved and your priorities, you have to decide on your target architecture and applications. Then you formulate several scenarios and choose one.
The goal here is irreproachable reasoning, free from the influence of salespeople. Your choice of target determines the HRIS roadmap which you'll need to put into practice next.
And that's the focus of the next phase, supported by projects with clear specifications and calls for tender. The first challenge is establishing specifications that are easy for readers to understand. It's not about saying where to click and what type of window opens. It's about making it clear what you expect from the soul of the HRIS and what you want to do with it.
And having a realistic call for tender that takes the market into consideration. There's no point asking for a pig with wings since there aren't any on the market. It's also a good idea to find out what's on the market beforehand, because it can spark ideas for things you wouldn't have even thought of. You can also target your tender to a few software publishers to save time.
Next, you have to integrate it, keeping in mind that while some publishers integrate their products for you, others will require you to hire an integrator, with or without a few recommendations.
Here the challenges are pragmatism and rigor. It's incredibly easy to underestimate the complexity of transferring data or interfaces, the sheer scope of the functional base, or the lack of skills, which undermines the efficiency of your service provider.
Last but not least, you have to bring it to life. That's the third phase. There's maintenance, of course, corrective, but also preemptive to keep the system evolving.
Nothing you decided in the beginning is set in stone after all.
You have to anticipate long-term costs.
The complexity of the market requires realism and pragmatism, as well as a healthy dose of lucidity. Publishers' version policies, overlapping service providers, and multi-contracting can all get very complex.
To recap, there are three phases in an HRIS project. 1. Define the target architecture to meet HR policy needs and remedy flaws in your current HRIS. 2. Implement your choices by turning to publishers and integrators. And 3. Bring the HRIS to life via corrective and preemptive maintenance. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.